This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
We've got a culturing process, a fermenting process, an aging process. So the butter will taste very different than, I guess, the average supermarket butter. I like to say we make butter makers butter. Like, this is the sort of butter makers would like to eat, simply because of the slow process in which we ferment and age and get the flavour into it. You know, the natural fermentation that gets all the flavours into the cream, and then once you churn it, you end up with this really rich, flavoursome butter that evolves and changes because it's a live culture that's in the butter as well.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Happened in January, and of course me coming from the Savoy, and we had other incredible talented people with the big names. We opened the door and suddenly we are empty and no one's coming. So it was very, very scary moment.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Martin Hudak is passionate about two art forms, coffee and cocktails. He is a world-renowned bartender, spirit ambassador, author and co-owner of Maybe Sammy in Sydney. Hi Martin, thanks for joining me.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm very, very pleased to have you on the show, especially after your long flight from overseas. And look, I could go on and on about your achievements, but I thought, why am I doing this? I'll just let you do all of that.
Oh, that's a hard task. I don't like to talk about myself too much. But yeah, I'm a true believer that my work should, speak itself for what I do. But, I think I've been very lucky in my life, and in the last 15 years in this industry, from back in London, now to being in Sydney, I've been very lucky to be surrounded by great people. And all these achievements are, of course, it's collective effort of everyone. And at the moment, I would say the biggest success is that as a group, Maybe group we have here in Sydney, we're growing organically and we have incredible teams and which winning accolades globally and nationally. So I would say, yeah, Maybe Sammy, it's like a jewel, like a diamond to me. Being 4 years in 50 best bars, world's 50 best bar ranking, it's kind of a big deal for me, and I'm very, very glad for it.
Well, you certainly are kicking goals, you and the whole team, and you've got quite a unique story. So I want to know, what had its first impression on you? Was it cocktails or coffee? Which came first?
Oh, it's like if I ask you which child is your favorite, if you have two or three, it's hard to pick one. Of course, you love them all. But legally, historically, where I'm coming from in Slovakia, you are not allowed to, touch alcohol or, make cocktails if you are not 18 years old. So I already started working in the coffee shops and restaurant when I was 15. And at that time, I fell in love for coffee and coffee craft. So I started with that. And then the moment I could go behind the real bar and make cocktails, I was like, whoa, this is great too. Why cannot, why we don't combine them together and do it like coffee cocktails? And, and that moment I realized, okay, I have a passion for both. How can I make them equally strong and equally, well-known globally? And that was my challenge since then.
Well, tell me a little bit about growing up in Slovakia, because it's such a unique country, obviously bordered by so many different other countries. What was the kind of drinking culture in Slovakia?
Yeah, that's a good question. Looking back 10, 15 years ago when I was, fresh of the studies, from Hotel Academy, where I studied all this culinary world. I graduated as a chef. I tried to work in a kitchen. I really didn't like it. I really respect chefs, to be honest, but it's such a hard job. You're just by yourself, no one looking at you, no one talking to you. So I realized straight away I want to be in front of the people. I want to be center of the attention. And in Slovakia, it was pretty difficult because there's no cocktail culture as such, or it wasn't 10, 15 years ago. It's very, very simple drinking culture there. People like eau de vie and clean spirits. People don't like to mix things together. They are believer of straight, strong flavors. And with the coffee, same. We historically we didn't have enough good quality products from overseas, although we were surrounded by 5 different countries. So we kind of struggle, we've been under influence of so many nations and cuisines. So I would say where I'm coming from, I was exposed to so many different things, but now it's getting better. We have way way better cocktail bars and coffee shops and restaurants, and become more cosmopolitan and more European, I would say. So I'm very proud to see where my country is at this point. And when I was leaving my home in 2014, I knew that the future is bright.
Yeah, interesting that, even in Australia for a long time, we were more of a beer, wine kind of drinking nation, and now we kind of embraced a bit of everything. I've had that drink, is it Borovichka?
Yes. Oh my God, I'm surprised you know how to say it.
Well, I remember trying that when I was in the States once. A friend of mine had a bottle, and it was like gin, but on absolute steroids. And I remember taking a sip when it was just straight and kind of it blowing my head off. But then I've had it in a few cocktails and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm a big juniper fan, so
yeah, absolutely. It's 100% juniper infusion or spirit, nothing else. And we have such a beautiful nature and mountains and forests. So for us, what flora and fauna gives us, we use kind of in a spiritual way as a liquid. So Borovichka is one of those spirits. And I remember when I tasted for the first time, very young, I was like, oh my God, this tastes like revenge from the forest.
Oh my God, that's a perfect way to put it. And then also, using lots of different kind of berries and fruits in a lot of their kind of spirits as well. Is that right?
Yeah. We pretty much distill everything what has sugar inside. So I remember in our backyard, we have a plum trees. And of course, my mom collected them all and made some beautiful plum jam, which I love. But then whatever fell on the ground and started getting a bit rotten, and fermented, or they were a little bit bad and broken, my father would collect them, ferment them, and then distill in his garage, and we would have our own slivovitz, which is plum eau de vie, and it was such a easy way how to do it. There were no instruments and regulations, and I remember my dad was his home distiller, and pretty much everyone did that and share with the friends and family, and at that time it was very, very, very strong and unregulated.
But that's where some of the best things start, aren't they? Is that that kind of starts off at moonshine, and then people kind of improve on the recipes, and that's where we've got some wonderful drinks in the world. But after you left school and you knew that cocktails were something you wanted to pursue, and coffee, you went to the Savoy in London. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, in Slovakia, I really achieved pretty much everything what I said. It was pretty easy to be one of the best because we had 5 bartenders in the country and maybe 5 bars, So I didn't feel challenged enough, and I really wanted to grow and see what is out there. And at that point, I traveled around the world for various competitions. They took me to Havana in Cuba. I went to Melbourne once, and I went to around the world. And once you start traveling, your eyes getting more and more open, and you realize, oh wow, there is so much I need to learn. So of course, for me, leaving my hometown, my family, I knew I have to choose the best place on earth, and that's London. Back in time, and even still now, London is Mecca of cocktails. And looking at the history of cocktails, Savoy is such a significant place. We're talking about 133 years of the oldest surviving 5-star hotel in Europe, one of the first American cocktail bars. There is this cocktail book which was written in 1930s, and all the classic drinks were made there. So for me, it was such an incredible challenge to be at that place. And I would say maybe I was lucky, maybe it was such a great timing that I got a position of senior bartender, which normally doesn't happen because you have to go through stages of being back of house, on the floor, helper, junior, etc. But I got a job straight away on top ranking behind the bar, and I wear a white jacket and I serve the queen and celebrities and famous people, and I realized, wow, this is the real cocktail world.
I mean, amazing that to go from, like you said, you're already doing wonderful things, but yeah, to be launched into that position. I'm sure when you put on that white jacket, you kind of felt the weight of the world on your shoulders.
100%. The pressure was on, everybody's watching, everybody's judging you. My English wasn't that well back then, and I had to go to school and studying. I had to study recipes, and I worked so many days and hours because I respect that place so much, and I didn't really want to make any mistakes. So great challenge in my life. Great.
Do you have any moments where you misstepped or you did something wrong that you kind of look back on and shudder?
Oh, yes, so many. Oh, my God, I could write a book. I was so green, so fresh, of course, the way how you should talk to people, and maybe you shouldn't use specific words or shouldn't swear, or the way maybe you should dress and behave. We have to shape every day for work, and I had a beard all my life since I remember, so I have to be clean shaved, and there's so many rules and regulations. So I'm not saying I was a rebel or I was like a badass, but I had this kind of moments where I wanted to really showcase them who I am. Like, this is me. Look at me. But I couldn't because of the rules. So that's where I mostly made the mistakes.
Well, also, I think, though, that it's wonderful to, especially when you're at a place where you want to learn, to be kind of conforming in a way that you're just really paying respect to the place. So, and you seem like you had so much respect for it. So I think that that's pretty awesome. And it's not like you haven't been able to be yourself since then. So you certainly come into your own. Tell me a little bit about global cocktail competitions. I feel that, if someone's not in that space, and it is a large world, but a lot of people don't really understand how it all works. The same with sommelier competition. So talk me through what a general competition looks like.
Yeah, you're right. Like, from the bartenders world, from mixology world, like there is not many things happening out there on social media or on TV, because chefs are celebrated for many years and they really made it. They became famous and they have the status. We have competitions, from master chefs, whatever. So they are really, really celebrated out there. Bartenders not as such. So whenever I tell someone, hey, I'm gonna represent my country and I'm going there and there, I'm like, what? You're just making a cocktails. Like, is that a real craft or art? And it's very hard to explain. And I even had to explain this to my parents. At early age, I was like, Mom, I need specific money for this bottle and this uniform and this glassware, and they didn't really get it. But once you start winning and traveling and building your name, people understand that to win a competition or be out there, it's like a golden ticket for you, and suddenly you become part of this global community. You build your name. Now, there are different reasons why people are competing. Sometimes people want to compete just because of the fame. Sometimes they want to have a great connections with people and want to travel and want to challenge themselves. And that was my case. It took me 7 years to become World Coffee and Good Spirit champion, like the best barista and bartender. And I never gave up, because I always knew that, you never lose. You either learn or you win.
Wow. Just to put that in perspective for people, you were announced World Coffee and Good Spirit champion in Budapest. You then went on a training program and demonstrations that took you to over 50 countries. That is absolutely insane. And for anybody that can't understand whether it's an art form, I challenge anyone to kind of, to just rethink that, because that's absolutely amazing. What drink did you win with?
Yeah, so there are a few rules. You have like 10 minutes, 15 minutes to prepare 2 cocktails each. One has to be cold and one has to be hot, both based on coffee, but different types of coffees. One espresso, one filter. You need to use sponsor spirits, and you're preparing for that like for about 8 months. And then you're on the stage, whole world's watching. There's 50 nations, like Olympic Games. And you made one mistake and you lose your points. Like I did twice. I became second in the world just by small difference. And that year in the finals, I prepared Irish coffee, which is a very famous cocktail. Of course, you have a whiskey, sugar, coffee, and cream. And this is like a staple. This one, you have to do it all the time because it's like a benchmark. And another drink was kind of my signature, where I try to utilize ingredients which are usually overlooked in the coffee industry. So I try to get some sort of like sustainable approach towards it. And I think the whole story, presentation, the music, the way I speak, and I really made big impression. And that year, I won with the highest scores ever in the history. And since then, it's like that.
Wow. Congratulations, first of all. And
Thank
for just,
you.
like you said, coming second a few times or a couple of times, and then continuing on and just pushing through it. That takes a lot of gumption to be able to do something like that. I mean, I also want, like, when you talk about the scoring, I mean, I suppose you can kind of Google it and look on YouTube, but you're judged on things like, your kind of attitude and, your charisma on stage, as well as kind of how your hand moves. Can you give us a bit more insight?
The rules are very, very big. They are like most difficult rules I've ever seen, comparing the bartenders competition or chefs competition. There's about 50 pages of rules. You have 5 judges looking at you. There are 2 taste judges who are completely just focusing on the taste. So if you tell them this tastes like a blueberry cake with a little bit of cinnamon aftertaste and this and that, it has to taste like that. If you tell them the temperature of this cocktail is like that, it has to be like that. Then you have a tech judge who's judging, as you said, how much you spill, if you make any mistakes, if your espresso going too fast or too slow. Then you have a head judge, you have a timekeepers. So the rules are very important. But most of the young bartenders, including myself, when I started, I said, rules? Who cares? I was bigger than life. I was like full of myself. I was like, I'm gonna show you who I am. And of course, I was overtime most of the time. I got disqualified because I didn't read the rules. So then I was like, okay, if I want to win, I had to really study, and I need to kind of nail this formula how to win.
And that's really humbling, isn't it? To go, okay, I have to play by the rules, but I have to play the game that I've entered myself into.
Of course. The best thing ever happened to me in life is when I failed, because these things really, really makes you being a better, and makes you understand that in the end of the day, it's not you or who you think who you are, it's the people out there. But not only in competition, it's not just the judges. In everyday life, your guests are your judges, and your competition is being better than you were yesterday. So that's the real challenge, because they're gonna judge you, but not by scores. They're gonna judge if they come back to your venues and bring more friends and spend more money. So this is real competition, and it's really, really scary world out there, because no one wants to have an empty bar or guest with the bad reviews.
Yeah, you said that really well, and it's inspiring. You're right, because at the end of the day, you want people to be coming in there because they enjoy themselves, not because they necessarily want to date you, because you can't date the whole world, can you? So
No. Of course
tell
not.
me how you found yourself in Australia.
Look, in 2017 at the Savoy, we won the world's best bar. We won the best bar team and so many accolades. I became world champion in coffee world. And, there is this saying that the goal which is achieved is not goal anymore. And I've been waiting all my life to be on top of the Olymp, on top of the mountain. I work at the best bar in the world. We were the best. And at that moment, I kind of felt like empty. I felt like, what's next? Like, where else I can go, and what can I do? And it's like, I heard about this syndrome of Olympics, Olympians, when they win, the winner has like the biggest crash ever. The second and third place are so hyped up for next year. And I guess that's what happened to me. I didn't feel challenged anymore, and I didn't feel like I can bring something on the table. So rather than being burned out and being there with a fake smile and forcing myself to serving others, I said, it's time for me to go and try the country where I've never been. I've been a few times, but I never really worked or lived. Don't know many people. I want to start from zero. Same way as I started 4 years before when I joined the Savoy, moved to London. And that moment I met my business partner, Stefano and Vince. And, if you know Italians, they have something which is so attractive. It's the way they look at life. They are so flamboyant, bohemian, so friendly, so happy all the time. And I kind of clicked with them, and I was like, these are the people I want to spend the rest of my life with. There's no way they're going to listen to this, so I'm not saying that because of them. They're not going to listen to this, but just between us.
It's wonderful because you're looking at, okay, who do I want to be in business with? How do I want to create this life? And starting at the kind of foundation, rather than going, I just want to pick that bar, it was, how do I create this new world for myself? And Maybe Sammy launched in 2019, so a pretty tough little year for you guys to be going into business. What did that look like?
Yeah. So I moved to Australia in 10 of July 2018, which is my birthday, actually. So it's funny. I landed on my birthday, and it's like a new rebirth. And yeah, since then, we've been working for like 6 months to open Maybe Sammy, and happened in January. And of course, me coming from the Savoy, and we had other incredible, talented people with the big names. We opened the door, and suddenly we are empty, and no one's coming. So it was very, very scary moment. And I would say we've been always believing in ourselves and what we do. We never kind of steer away from our dedication and focus, and really work it out very well for us, because in June that year we won in New Orleans at Tell's the Cocktails, the world's best new cocktail bar. And we're talking about the whole world. There are so many new bars every year being open. So getting this award, being such a small bar from Australia, really opened up the door for us. And in that specific year, 2019, before the world shut again because of pandemic, we got 14 international national awards. So wow, yeah.
That's truly amazing. And it's funny because I used to work down at Key for a long time, and you guys weren't too far away, but I just remember that being such a tumultuous time, and not going out for drinks after work like, normally we all would. We'd all be headed off for a couple of places, but it just was, those uncertain times. And it's a shame because you really wanted to support, your fellow hospo people, but you just kind of also were watching your money and thinking about where you spent your dollars and where the next paycheck was coming from. But you really used the pandemic to your advantage, which goes to kind of show what kind of person you are. I think you didn't remain idle, but you created Sammy Jr. and you also published your first book, Spiritual Coffee, which I haven't read but would love to read. Tell me about not only working through the pandemic, but how you kind of motivated yourself to also be creative.
Yeah, that's a good question. In pandemic, it wasn't an easy time. You could be on a sofa or play with the yeast and bake a bread and have an air fryer and whatever people were doing, which is creative way how to kill the time and be engaged with something new. For me, it was an opportunity finally slow down and not being on service or around the world and being at home. And I had this idea that the world of coffee and cocktails is so big and there are so many great books about each of those topics, but not really together. And many people were asking me for a long time as I was traveling, like, okay, so what's the real story about espresso martini? Was it really Naomi Campbell who ordered it first? What is this real story behind this drink and that drink? So in the world of social media and the internet, there are so many different stories which are not necessarily true. So I took the opportunity and kind of advantage of the situation, and I decided to write my very own first, I would say, coffee cocktail Bible, where you can discover the first ever written recipe for coffee cocktail and first coffee liqueur and how it was done. And we're going from the history to the modern times. And I believe this book is not for everyone because it's very, very historical and lots of information, dates and things like that. Of course, with some amazing recipes. But I believe this book really is important for young emerging bartenders and baristas to understand the history, because if you don't understand the past, how you can create the future? And these days there are so many young talented people out there who just want to jump straight into it and start creating their own drinks, but they're missing foundation. So I really, really took this opportunity, and hopefully this book can help the people. And same way, having a space like Sammy Jr., which combining coffee and cocktails, mornings and night, it's very unique. Because in Australia, what strikes me the most, apart from having the best coffee scene in the world, is the coffee shops close at 3:00. And in Europe, this doesn't happen, in Europe, you can have a coffee later on at night. So I was like, why don't we offer a coffee until the end? And why don't we offer, cocktails and wines and things like that earlier in the day? Because this is pretty European, and, being surrounded by so many Italians, we want to open something like that. So Sammy Jr. is really the real concrete space of my ideas, beliefs, and love and passion for coffee cocktails.
I love that. I mean, and so often between, like you said, 3:00 or whatever it may be, you're often doing meetings or, sitting down to get some work done, or you might be, about to go out for dinner. It's right in that time where you often need a place in between, especially in the city where you not always have got your home to kind of pop back into. So I love that idea, and I love the idea of making it an accessible place for whatever anybody feels like. And as we know, in the wine world, we survive on beer. In the cocktail world and the hospo world, we survive on coffee. So it makes so much sense, and I'm glad I've never been, but I'm really glad that it exists. I want to talk about Mr. Black, an incredible spirit. And I'm going to use the word game changer, which I actually don't like because everyone uses it these days. I kind of feel like it's overused. But Mr. Black was a game changer. It changed my mind about coffee liqueurs. The espresso martini is a great cocktail, but it is something that is a little bit like a frenzy or a fever. Once one gets made, as you know, they just get hammered and they just start going out. And in Australia, we've embraced them like no other. So how did Mr. Black come about? And can you tell me why it is so unique?
Yeah, that's a good point. Game changer. I kind of like it. I mean, when I was back at the Savoy in 2014-15, I remember I tasted for the first time. I was like, whoa, this really tastes like coffee, and it's not overly sweet. And I started working with them kind of like, like a friend, or a consultant here and there, until I moved to Australia in 2018, and founder Tom Baker sat me down and was like, look, Martin, if there is only one person in this world who is Mr. Black in a like personalized form, it's you. You are us, and you doing already what we're doing when you travel around the world. You're like evangelist, and you gospeling the world of coffee and cocktails. And I think this would be a great combination if we join the forces. And they never had ambassador before. They never had like face of the brand. And they took me on board in 2018, and I had only one condition. I still need to work in a bar because I need to be relevant to what I'm doing. I don't want to be one of those guys who's going around the world and preaching about things and not actually doing them. So we shake the hands, and since then it's 5 years, and I've been able to travel the world, introduce it to different markets, and showing the people that coffee liqueur is not something what we think it is, that is necessarily overly sweet, sugary, artificial. But coffee liqueur can be made with the real beans, with less sugar, can be approachable and easier to mix.
Wow, it is. It really is that. It's that balance of flavour for me of Mr. Black, and like you said, it's not overtly sweet, which is something that I think is a massive downfall with some of the coffee liqueurs. It has a bitterness to it. It's got spices. I mean, it's got that wheel of aromatics that you find in coffee is still found in Mr. Black, and I actually just like it as a drink just on its own. I think it's just great. Just if it's slightly chilled and just in a glass, it's just a great drink.
Yeah, absolutely. Coffee has more flavor compounds than wine. There is officially like more than 2,500 flavor compounds and aromatics inside, but they are not discovered yet because our palate is not there yet compared to wine and food, So, of course, whenever people taste Mr. Black Glass, like, wow, this is like a chocolate, this is like this is like spice. And it should be like that because, coffee essentially is a fruit. And, we take the fruit same way as we take grapes for your wine. We process them and turn them into liqueur. So, of course, it should taste, differently, not just what we thought the coffee is.
Yeah, and that's what the beauty is of getting different beans from different countries and the roasting process and all of it. It's just a whole world to enjoy. You also were named Ambassador of the World. Is that the right title? Maybe that's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, is it like the best international brand ambassador of the year? I think that's one. So if you think there are so many brands out there, right? There are so many brands and incredible spirits, and most of them has someone who represents them globally. We're talking about like thousands of people. And they said, oh, you are the best at your job. And I'm like, okay. But usually these people represent bigger brands, like big distilleries, vodkas and gins. And Mr. Black is such a, compared to them, small modifier, small liqueurs coming from Central Coast in Australia. So for us to getting this award, it really changed a lot.
I mean, on your Instagram, I encourage anyone to go and visit Martin's Instagram because there is that moment up on your tile, and you can't help but be totally exhilarated for you in that moment. And you speak so well, you don't sound nervous. It's just it's a really lovely moment, and it almost feels like you're there. So if you are listening to this podcast, go out and look at that moment that you get announced, because it is really beautiful. So on your days off, do you often go out for a cocktail, or are you the kind of person that would much prefer to stay indoors, drinking something you make yourself? What do you do on your day off?
That's a very good question. Like it's always like a shoemaker daughters and the sons. They are barefoot most of the time. It's same for me. When I'm home, I don't really make cocktails. I rather have a nice glass of wine or a nice, sip of whiskey or mezcal and take it easy. It's very important to have a nice balance between private life and work life. Whatever we do in hospitality, or at least at my level, what we're doing, it's real show business. We put so much time and effort and passion and energy into what we do on every day that sometimes we are carried away and then we cannot differentiate, the privacy and work. So for me, I'm still learning because I am truly obsessed with work, with people and making people happy. So when I have a day off, or if I have a day off, I'd rather stay home, recharge, and then back out there to socialize.
That's you said that really well, because one of the problems I think with hospitality is exactly what you said, is we often put so much of emphasis and importance on making other people happy and what they want, that when it comes down to our time off, we often say, well, now it's my turn and I deserve a little bit of that. But that can be dangerous, because you're actually saying I deserve to be given cocktails and going out and drinking and eating food, and that recharge or that element of downtime is often missed.
Yeah, you're right. So right. Yeah.
So it's wonderful to hear, and I think that as a true professional, you have learnt that you can still have fun and you can still go out and enjoy yourself, but you have to have that moment of recharge and yes.
Yeah. If you want to look after others, you have to look after yourself first. Simple as that.
Now tell me about, if you do go out for a cocktail or you go out for a drink, what is the kind of establishment that you find yourself in? What kind of venue makes you feel comfortable?
I'm old school guy, so for me it has to be very good music. I'm talking about jazz, blues, soul, maybe a bit of swing, old school. Talking about dark lights, yellow lights. I don't like bright lights. For me, when I see white light in the venue, I'm running away. So I need something more warmer. And I like venues which are designed and fitted out to feel like you are in this beautiful, like a warm hug. I want to be hugged by the venue. It's hard to describe, but some of the venues, when you walk in, you feel like, whoa, I'm like back in time. And this feels like, 1940s, 20s or 70s. And for me, those elements, the first impression when I feel about light, music, and environment makes a lot. The second thing is, of course, the offering and the service. I like to be surrounded by people who really are interested in my day and how I am and what I would like to drink, and people with a genuine, hospitality and smile on their face. And then offering, of course. I'm a big fan of Italian cuisine. I'm a big fan of wines and rare spirits, not necessarily cocktails all the time, but if I do choose a cocktail, would be definitely classic drink. And we're talking about martini or old fashioned or Manhattan, those sort of style drinks.
Oh, I love that. Interesting that you said that, because I've only been to Maybe Sammy once and I ordered a French 75 and I thought, I should have, just had something off the list that I hadn't had, but I am a bit of a classic person and I like, sometimes my first experience is to have a classic cocktail when I try a new venue. So you make me feel not bad about that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. We are all about classic drinks, 100%.
I want to know what foods and drinks do you miss from back home the most?
Ooh, I really miss beer, Slovakian beer, because there are so many craft breweries, and respect to all of them. I work with so many of them, but sometimes it's just too crazy, too acidic and too fermented and too bitter, too this and that. In Slovakia, simplicity of beer, traditional Pilsner style, it's just so easy and refreshing, and I miss that simplicity of the beer sometimes. I'm a big beer person, for us in Slovakia, it's cheaper than water sometimes. So, I grew up on beer. In terms of the food, of course, it's my mom's kitchen. There is nothing better than mama's food. And we're talking about, lots of stewed foods and cabbages and dumplings and potatoes and lots of fermented ingredients. Of course, we have none of the exotic ingredients in Slovakia, because we're in Central Europe, but we have lots of like root, veggies, heavy foods. And that's like my comfy food, when I feel like back in time, when I'm home and I'm being looking after.
There's a cabbage, I think it's like a cabbage sauerkraut soup that I've always wanted to try.
Yeah, Christmas one. I love it. The best.
Oh, yum. Sounds so good. Now, I'm going to ask you this question, which is probably a little unfair. If you could only drink 3 beverages for the rest of your life, say just today, not, if you had to choose 3 today, what would they be and why?
Okay. Coffee. Filter coffee. I'll be specific. Has to be filtered black coffee made as a pour over V60, slowly dripping, very good quality beans, light roast, and sip slowly. The second would be a Slovakian Pilsner style of beer. And the third one will be mezcal or any agave spirits. So think about tequila, mezcal. Clean in a nice short, small glass and sip it slowly, gently.
I love that. Martin, it's been really lovely to talk to you. I love your passion. I also just love hearing a little bit about your homeland, because I've never been. It's always been a place I'd love to go. And what you've done really, it makes sense. It kind of makes me think, why hasn't someone gone out and done this before? Because like you said, the two worlds have collided, but you do it so so beautifully. And, the future is your oyster from what you do from here on.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's always amazing to share my passion with people out there and to see people like you being genuinely interested in what we do. And we need more people like you and me, and hopefully we create a better place for everyone.
I love that. Thank you for your time, and cheers to you, Martin.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.